Welcome to another edition of MoxieTalk, where we give you an intimate look into the courage, character, and defining moments of today's most inspiring individuals. I'm Kirt Jacobs, host of MoxieTalk, where previous guests have included leaders from the world of politics, business, culinary, sports, entertainment, art, community activism, and philanthropy. Today, our 310th guest in our series is Robert Curran. He's the artistic director of the Louisville Ballet. Now, for those of you who don't know our guest, allow me to read some of Robert's bio. He was trained at the Australian Ballet School, and having enjoyed a thrilling and fulfilling career with the Australian Ballet as a principal artist, Robert took his passion and discipline he developed as a dancer and set his sights on diversifying his knowledge, skills, and abilities. With education and experience, he continually expanded his ability to move his own body on stage, and through this, moving an audience through a wide range of emotions. Beyond his dancing career, he strives to continue to move people towards a satisfying encounter with dance. Robert is motivated by the form that a dancer gains from training in the traditions of classical ballet, where respect and discipline can facilitate breathtaking strength and freedom. He is also inspired by the innovation that forms the function of any artist, that being to bravely and boldly express oneself through art for the greater good of a community. As artistic director, Curran continues to contribute to the global arts community, enriching his knowledge of the art form to which he has devoted his life. He is excited by and committed to the Louisville community with its abundant respect for the arts and its exciting perspective on the future. Robert, it is a true joy for you to join us here on MoxieTalk today. Humbled and honored for you to be here with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's quite an honor. Very humbled to have you here across the pond and
Across
everything.
the pond, all the way.
All the way. Here you are in Louisville. Good old hometown. Appreciate it. What drives you to excel in your area of expertise? It's a pretty remarkable arc and journey through the artistic world, mainly ballet.
Yeah. Look, I think it's constantly evolving, that part of me. Some days I feel like a total fraud, and so my motivation is to fight against that. Some days I feel like I'm a lazy person stuck in a busy person's life. Sometimes I feel totally self-possessed and completely fine. So it's kind of constantly evolving. I think in recent times it's an compulsion to be authentic. I really want to make sure that in all of the decisions I make, all the things that I say, all the relationships I build, that there's an authenticity there. Really trying to find who I am and be that person in those instances. In the past, it has been the art. As a dancer, working my way through the ranks of Australian Ballet, it was that next role and that next opportunity to be on stage. So it's a constant evolution, I think, that motivation.
Do you consider yourself a very competitive person? Is that fair?
Not externally competitive. I would say I'm a perfectionist in that I'm very critical of myself. I think that's something that's inherent in a lot of artists and dancers. Yeah. I would go as far as to say dancers in particular, because it's our very cells that we're criticizing, the length of our legs, the shape of our feet, how high we are. We're constantly looking in the mirror, very, very exposed. So I think there's a self-critical perfectionism there, but I wouldn't say I'm competitive in that I need to beat anyone else. Okay.
So your own little internal
competition
or battle, if you will. So when did you first get the spark or kind of the aha moment? I think every artist has, whether they're in, a musical instrument or an actor, or kind of when I found my passion and love for what I'm doing. When was that moment for you? Or was it an evolution?
It was definitely an evolution. Really? I started dance when I was 4 years old. I don't remember any part of my life that didn't have dance in it.
Wow.
I remember very, very early days of ballet classes. I remember my grandmother telling me the story of why I was enrolled in dance, because my grandfather was a really good dancer, and she only married him because he was a good dancer, she told me. And then I was born her first grandchild as a boy on my grandfather's birthday, years after he had died. So my grandmother said, this boy needs to learn how to dance because, my Jack was such a good dancer and they share a birthday. So it was kind of preordained, I think, in some sense, that I was going to be a dancer. so the spark kind of grew over time, partly because it's all that I knew and all that I've known, and partly because it gave me so much. It brought me out of my shell. It gave me an opportunity to tell stories and inspire people, affect people. So it kind of grew over time.
What is it like to be Robert Curran? What is it like to be you?
Right now, it's pretty stressful. There's a lot going on. There are a lot of balls in the air. There are a lot of things that I want to achieve here in Louisville, Kentucky. I feel very, very fortunate to have the opportunities that I've been given here and before. But here especially, I feel like this is a wonderful community. There is a lot that the arts has to say, and there is a lot that the arts can achieve in this community. I feel like we need to be more than just an arts organization in the traditional sense. So I'm constantly pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, trying to maximize the impact that I can have, whether that's impact on the beautiful dancers that I work with, or the guest choreographers, or the refugee crisis, or the homeless crisis, or the struggles of the LGBTQ plus community, or any struggling community. How can the organization that I work for be generous and aware and caring and hospitable? So I put a lot of pressure on myself and on the organization that I'm leading to think about those things and stretch beyond. So I do sometimes feel like I'm almost at bursting.
Can you define leadership or artistic management, Robert, in one word, as I always say in the great English lexicon? That can be a challenge for artistic people. They're very creative.
No, I've got a word.
Take all the words you need.
I got a word.
Okay, a word.
Tenacious.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like, as we were saying earlier, I feel like there's an evolution that's going on inside me, and probably inside everyone. There's an evolution, and I think you have to be tenacious to go through that process. You have to be vulnerable. You have to allow yourself to be wrong. You have to, be able to live in moments that are really uncomfortable. You have to do things that you don't necessarily want to do. You have to say things that you don't necessarily want to say. And you have to also be ready to accept humbly accept the praise that comes to you. It's two sides of the coin, but you have to be very, very tenacious and adaptable and flexible to be a leader. I think the days of leaders that are expected to be perfect and always right, they are or should be gone. It's a very different world now, and
Absolutely.
I'm striving for that kind of leadership that always is evolving. But you do have to be tenacious.
What do you consider to be the single most positive contribution you've made to humanity? No small question. No wrong answer. It's your contribution. Maybe you haven't made it yet, but I want to answer.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I have. I do feel like recently, in the last 2 years to 18 months to 2 years of my life, I've been through a couple of things that have made me question who I am and what is authentically me. And I don't know yet what that is, but for the first time I've been really asking myself, are you doing that because you think other people want you to do it, or are you doing it because you really believe like it's the right thing for you to do? And again, that's an evolution as well. But I do feel like the metacognition of that is probably the biggest step that I've made in my personal development. Appreciating that I am different, I do things differently, I don't fit a pre-existing mold, whether it's a pre-existing mold for a dancer or a pre-existing mold for an artistic and executive director, a pre-existing role for a man. I am different to everyone else, and I should honor that difference and share that difference with other people. I think it's so important today.
Well, when I did my research on you and thought of you as a very wise addition to the library, MoxieTalk Library, the two words that kind of came to mind were you're a positive enigma, and I don't think I've ever used that. That's what I see and sense when I've read about you and watched some things and talked to you. You know, it's just there's a positive enigma. I don't know if that's even the right two words to put together, but that's what it feels like to me.
I cop a lot of flack from my staff for that enigma part. They don't love that so much.
Yes, they'll probably watch this.
They'll probably watch this, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to break that down. I love the fact that there's that positive aspect to it, because I do want that. That those values have been instilled in me by my family, and I love that I get to bring them. I do want to be a good person. The enigma part, you know, I believe absolutely 100% an introvert in an extrovert's life. So
wow.
I'm in a role that requires this kind of dialogue. I'm in a role that requires me to lead, to stand out in front of people and inspire them to do their best and bring their best and to take risks on stage, you know. So I have to be outside of myself. I need to give a lot, but the introvert in me needs that quiet space. And the perfectionist in me, you know, tears me down every now and then and says, you're not good enough to be out there, you know, speaking what you're speaking and walking the walk you're walking. So just sit down and stop. You know, you're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. And you know, then there's the fraud in me, the person that feels like I'm a fraud, that says, you know, you gotta be more real than that. You know, until you've got your real, then don't show anyone. But authenticity. But I guess the authentic part of me right now is acknowledging the evolution, that I'm not finished, and I'm not going to be finished. And you know, I always do say that there is as much art in the process as there is in the product. I love the idea of welcoming people into the rehearsal studio to watch these magical moments that happen in the studio that you never see on stage. They'll never be on stage, because stage is different to the studio. And I guess my life is kind of the same thing. You know, there is hopefully as much authenticity in my finding my authenticity as there is in whatever it might be. It's difficult to it's new for me as well. So tackling that whole enigma thing is tough, but I have great people around me supporting me as I try and figure out what that is in a kind of new age of leadership, where I don't feel like you have to be perfect. I do feel like you can be kind of getting a bit messy and still have people inspired by you.
Could you describe in detail a particular scenario or incidents where you utilized your own philosophy on leadership? Now, some guests like to tie it back to the leadership question, which you answered tenacious, but you don't have to tie it to that, but some do.
I would like to think in my my struggle for authenticity and my acknowledgement of my own imperfections and weaknesses, that generosity is a big part of my leadership style. I like to ask in situations of tension or stress, what do you need? I get to use that a lot with the dancers. We had a very demanding ballet that we did in our 65th anniversary season, and there were three men, a trio of men in particular, that have an incredibly difficult aerobic aspect to the performance, and they weren't getting it. They weren't getting the precision, they weren't getting the choreography, they weren't getting the musicality. They were a mess. It was
so
really...
there was no chemistry, or their energy level?
Their energy levels, their focus, it just wasn't there. And I was furious, because I'd gone to a lot of trouble to get this amazing ballet and to pay for this amazing ballet, to put this opportunity before them, and they weren't delivering. And I remember in the 15 steps from the front of the room to the back of the room, where they were heaving over the bar at the back of the room, my whole approach changed as I walked towards them, and I felt like the first step, I was furious, and they were going to get it. They were going to cop it.
Yep.
And I didn't know what I was going to say, but it was going to be mean.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I got to the 15th step, what came out of my mouth was, guys, what do you need? What do you need me to do to help you get where we all know we need to get to?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need?
Mm-hmm.
And that became one of the most productive little 2-minute pep talks that I'd had. You know, they were very, I think they were terrified that I
Sure.
was going to tear strips off them. And they should have been, because it was really bad.
Yeah.
But when they realized that there was generosity coming at them instead of animosity, I feel like that we created a much more productive situation,
Mm-hmm.
and the improvements were exponential after that. So I don't always get it right. You know, I have a fire in me as
Sure.
well that can.
That's why you're seated here. Yeah.
But I think generosity is an important part of leadership.
Mm-hmm. So now we're going to go through the picture association part of our MoxieTalk
Sure.
and the evolution of Robert. Don't have many pictures from your early youth, but
Uh-huh.
more from your professional
Yep.
aspect. So I'll hold these up and you just tell us what's going on.
Yeah, this is a ballet. I can't remember what year it was, actually. It was called Symphonie Fantastique.
Okay.
And what I remember most about this ballet is that we took it on tour
Okay.
to Paris, and I was able to perform it opening night for our season in Paris at the Châtelet.
Now,
This is Cinderella.
okay.
This is me dancing with Lucinda Dunn, and that's a pretty loving look I have looking at her. We did a lot together. She and I became principals at the same time.
Okay.
We were promoted to principal at the same time.
Mhm.
She was really an incredible dancer. Talk about tenacious, and we built some really fabulous roles together. I have so many fond memories of working with her.
I won't tell the audience what this is.
Yeah, right. This is Lucinda again
Mhm.
in the Nutcracker.
Yes.
We didn't do the Nutcracker very much in
Really?
Australia. We did this traditional Sir Peter Wright's version. We did it twice in my 16-year career.
Mhm.
So it's been quite a shock coming to
Yeah,
the United States
it's a
and
big
doing
deal.
doing it every year. It's a really big deal.
Yeah, it's a really big
I love
deal.
it. It's some of the most beautiful ballet music that's
Mhm.
ever been written.
I like this picture.
Oh.
That's why I picked it.
So this is in rehearsals for a ballet called Human Abstract that
Mhm.
I did back in 2010.
Mhm.
2010, I started a production company with a couple of fellow dancers of Australian ballet, and we wanted to create a space for more new work.
Mhm.
There are really still not a lot of opportunities for new work to be made in the classical ballet world.
Mhm.
And we were kind of bemoaning that together and thought, well, hell, why don't we just create our own opportunities? So we created a production company called Jack Productions. Jack was my grandfather's name.
Mhm.
He was the really good dancer. And we made Human Abstract. And that iteration was actually a story of a relationship breakdown, and had a female protagonist in the leading role.
Mhm.
So we collaborated with this fantastic Sabina Perry, this fantastic actor dancer in that version of Human Abstract. But Human Abstract is the ballet that I brought to Louisville,
Mhm.
and we ended up with an all-male creative team, pretty much an all-male creative team. So it felt incredibly inappropriate to tell a female story from 5
Right.
men. So we created a same-sex story. So
Mm.
it became kind of an exploration of a homosexual relationship breakdown.
Was this your idea? Or
Yeah,
was this
it was
there?
actually. It was.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, there's a kind of a, there was an article that was written, and I said it, so I can't blame anyone else. I said it. I said that I was done with cashmere sweaters because I felt like I was in this box where I had to
Right.
wear a button down and a cashmere sweater, and I had these horrible cashmere sweaters that just made me feel trapped.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, actually, I don't hate cashmere sweaters. I just want a nice pink, soft pink one. And pair it with a pair of red
Bum,
pumps.
bum, bum.
And there you go. That's what happened.
And this one has a multitude of interpretations. I
Yeah.
thought it was very creative.
Yeah. It was a really fun shoot.
I can imagine. But this is the one that got someone's attention, which ultimately kind of led to you being here.
Yeah.
There's something about that picture.
Yeah.
It's really cool to me.
I was I'm actually wearing my mom's bracelet in that as well.
Okay.
There are a couple of things about that photo that I think speak to who I'm trying to be. I don't want to be forced into a mold. I do want to do things now because my legs are never going to look that good again.
Yeah.
Like, never going to look as good as they do right now. So might as well get them out there. But more than that, more than the kind of glib aspect of it is, I feel like the fear that exists in people when they see somebody that's different to them is a problem. That fear comes up first is a problem when you come up against a person who has an exterior or that's not familiar to you, or a behavior that's not familiar to you, or a culture that's not familiar to you. That we react with fear first is a problem to me, instead of reacting with curiosity and respect and openness. And I just feel like at that point in time, the struggles that were brought to my attention that the LGBTQ plus community were going through just made me feel like, look, if I'm in a leadership position, I've achieved everything that I've achieved. I am part of the queer community. I need to make sure that people understand that I'm part of the queer community, and that they can come to Louisville Ballet as a safe place.
Sure.
They can be surrounded by like-minded people here, that fear is not going to be the way they're greeted at Louisville Ballet, and that in fact we are asking for more cultures and more behaviors and more information and more of our community to come and be with us so that we can learn and be better. I think if the rest of the world would just expand their minds just a little bit to try and not react with fear to anybody that's different to you, I think we would have a much safer, a much more productive, a much more creative world.
I think that's a great commentary on humanity.
Yeah, and all in red pumps.
Now, I kind of call this your best James Bond photo, but tell us who's in this picture.
Yeah, no facial hair at all. I did go through that period as well.
Yeah.
That's my mom and dad.
That's great.
Yeah, I miss my mom so much. She's been gone, 18 months now.
And what was the event here?
This is the 65th anniversary of the ballet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
big moment.
Big deal.
That's something that I don't think a lot of Louisvillians know, or maybe even appreciate, that the cultural community here is so old and has so many great stories and so much respect in the wider community.
For a city this size.
For a city this size,
Pretty remarkable.
It is.
Not just horses and bourbon.
Definitely not, although that's fun too.
It is. If someone asked you, what does Robert Curran stand for, what would you tell them? Not what they might think about you. You know, that article, the pictures I showed, I'm sure that had that fear thing, some people's reaction to that. I don't know if I'm not asking, but you may receive some commentary from it. I looked at it and smiled because I knew the type of individual. I didn't know you, but I sensed that this is a person very self-aware and very authentic, but I don't want to answer it for you. I'll shut up. Sorry.
No, yeah. I think that I stand for open-mindedness. I have a direction that I want to go, and I'm committed to that. And I feel like my experience and my passion and my education has given me some tools to get there. And I'm passionate about that. I don't necessarily want to do a 90-degree or 180-degree turn, but I am open to other ideas and input, and I would like to think that I'm open to change and open to a kind of environment that is fueled by people bringing different things, not just an environment that's fueled by a single person going in a single direction, but an environment that might be guided or led by that, but is not 100% made up and done. I thrive on that creative energy of being, as I said earlier, being in a room with creative people is such a joy to me. So I would like to think that I stand for openness to that collaborative kind of approach.
If you could have dinner alone with anyone living or deceased, who would it be and why?
Oh my gosh, Serge Diaghilev.
Really?
in a second. If I could spend time with him, I'd be scared out of my mind, but if I could spend time with him, I think I would learn so much about what motivated him to bring together Picasso and Matisse and Debussy and Satie and Stravinsky and Nijinsky. I mean, these superstars, superstars in the ballet world. Why did he do it? Like, I've read every book about him, but
where did the genius come from?
Where did the genius come from? What is his spark? Where did the tyrant come from? Where did the kind of gentle giant come from? How did he deal with the pressures of that role, that entrepreneurial, that role that he had was just impresario. He was phenomenal, and the work that he gave to my art form, I still can't totally understand it. There would be no Australian ballet if it wasn't for Serge Diaghilev.
Really?
And I wouldn't have had the career that I had if it wasn't for him.
Well, you're our 310th guest, Robert, so no one gets out of the hot seat, the rocket seat, the guest seat without our signature question. God forbid, Robert, you walk out of the studio today, this is your last day on earth. How do you want to be remembered by, fellow dancers, those you've managed, from an executive director standpoint, family, friends, people close to you? I could go on and on. How do you want to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as somebody who was quietly brave. I think back over my privileged, don't get me wrong, my privileged life, and I haven't lost sight of my love for and my belief in this art form and in art in general. That has been an energy in me that has existed for as long as I can remember. Music, dance, visual art, theatre, all of it, design. And I would like to think that in the adversity that I've faced, small as it may be, relatively up to date, and any adversity in the future, that I've been brave about my approach to that, whether that's from a personal perspective or a professional perspective. I'd like to think that piece of advice, do it now, because it'll only get harder, is something that I bravely stepped into.
Well, Robert, I'm very appreciative and humbled and honored that you took the time to sit in this seat and sit still. Your legs went back and forth a couple times, but you sat still.
I can't sit still that well.
Humbled and honored you came on MoxieTalk.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
If today's talk has inspired you, we'd love to hear from you, and we appreciate any feedback you have. And also, we're all over all the social media platforms. Just type in MoxieTalk with Kirt Jacobs. Until next time, I'm Kirt Jacobs. Thanks for watching.